everyone, and thanks very much for joining us at Cambridge University Press Global Schools Festival. My name is Cindy Forde. I'm the founder of Planetari, which is an education platform aligned to the UN Sustainable Development Goals that equips children to be the innovators and entrepreneurs of a better world. It's my great pleasure to be here with Clare Brook, who's CEO of the Blue Marine Foundation, or Blue. Clare's career has been dedicated to protecting our planet, and she's worked multidimensionally, including in the finance and conservation sectors, and she sees education as a key to lasting change. Blue and Planetari have collaborated to create an ocean adventure, which is a set of resources for schools to help children understand how our oceans work and the challenges they face and how we can look after them. So Clare, I'd like to start by asking, what are the big challenges facing our oceans?
Well, the oceans are in a lot of trouble, which is clearly very worrying. The human race is damaging the oceans, which in turn is threatening to harm us. We're filling them with pollution, plastic, yes, of course, but also agricultural and human waste and things like noise pollution. We're warming them through climate change, and we're actually managing to change the entire pH of the ocean, rendering it more acidic. But we're also taking far too much out of the oceans. We're using highly destructive industrial scale fishing methods to extract all life and habitats from the ocean. And the really worrying thing is that by stripping the ocean of these huge complex webs of life, we're reducing the ocean's capacity to absorb CO2 and release oxygen. And because the ocean plays such a vital function in regulating the planet's climate and in essentially providing us with the breath that we take, we really have to do something urgently to stop this problem of over-extraction from the ocean.
It clearly is a really big mess and a very complicated one. What approach is Blue taking to make a difference here?
Well, what Blue's trying to do is, first of all, put more of the ocean under protection. Because the good news is that when you leave bits of the ocean alone, the life in it comes back remarkably fast, much faster than it does on land, in fact. So we're aiming to put about 30% of the ocean under protection, as in we're stopping all harmful fishing activities in those protected areas. That doesn't mean preventing all types of fishing. What we're talking about is these huge industrial scale fishing operations and deep sea mining and so on. And the other 70% of the ocean we want to see sustainably managed. So Blue's working with governments to set up these huge areas of protection. But we're also working with small scale fishing communities to show that you can fish sustainably, and that goes hand in hand with an increase in marine life, but also with improved living standards for those coastal communities. But there are parts of the ocean that have been so badly damaged that we're having to restore life and habitats there. So we're working on some whole ecosystem restoration, including in the Solent on the south coast of the UK. And finally, we're working to connect people more with the sea. And that's where my work with you comes in, Cindy, because we're aiming to reach younger generations, schools and teachers, to show people that it is possible to save the ocean and how that can be done, and essentially to have hope for the future.
Well, that does lead me to my next question, Clare. You're doing an enormous amount of work, and this is an issue that affects every single living creature on Earth. And yet we hardly hear about this in our adult lives, let alone in schools. So what can primary teachers do to bring this topic into the classroom and to engage young children?
Well, there are so many different ways that you can talk about the ocean to bring it alive. And I think the first thing that's really worth doing is to give children a love of the ocean and an understanding about it. So explaining about all the extraordinary creatures that live there and the way that life on Earth is interconnected, how the oceans essentially were the starting point for all life on Earth. There are great films that you can show children, everything from David Attenborough's Blue Planet through to Finding Nemo. There's one that came out recently called My Octopus Teacher. And these give children inspiration and a love of life below the waves, especially if your school is based quite far from the sea and, you know, they might not have that immediate connection or experience with the sea. Secondly, I think it's good to explain to children why it's so important to have a healthy ocean and about the link between oceans and climate change. This is obviously much more of a complex subject, and you can go as deep into that as is appropriate for the age level of children. And then I think children actually enjoy thinking about destruction in a way that obviously they want to do something about it. I found myself talking to an assembly of 10 and 11-year-old boys a year or so ago. And I asked them to name some examples of destructive fishing methods. And they were all incredibly well informed, and they were coming up with things like long lining, purse seining, electric pulse fishing, you know, these awful methods. Anyway, the one that they missed was dynamite fishing, which amazingly still goes on in some parts of the world. So I made a sort of explosion gesture, and they all yelled out, "Dynamite!" And the headmaster was going shh like this, and the plaster was practically falling from the ceiling. But it was just great that they got really engaged with it. And then, of course, we went on to have a discussion as to how you could fish sustainably rather than using these very destructive methods.
Well, that does make a lot of sense, to make it dramatic and to make it fun. And I'd also say it's really impressive that they knew such a lot. The teachers had clearly done a great job, as so many teachers do. And I think that's really important, that teachers should have the confidence that they can teach these issues well without necessarily needing to be marine specialists.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm not a marine biologist either, but I think the best example, Cindy, is what you've done, because you've made these incredibly engaging education materials, which are really good fun, which I think is very important, but they're also informative. So they help the children and the teachers understand. So I think it'd be worth you showing some of the materials that you've put together.
Well, I'd really love to do that. I have to say that it wouldn't have been possible unless we'd collaborated with the Blue Marine Foundation. And this is our aim at Planetari, to collaborate with subject experts like you and your team, Claire, because then not only are you teaching children about the problems, but you're teaching the solutions by showing really dynamic people in action, which I think is hugely inspirational, and not to mention the factual accuracy and the depth of knowledge that you can then include in the content. So we created a set of resources called An Ocean Adventure, and it's based on real projects that Blue are working on. We created an interactive magazine with hands-on activities and accompanying lesson plans and classroom resources for teachers to download. The driving impulse about our approach to learning is that this does have to be an adventure. It has to be engaging. Children are surrounded by media that has high-end production values, but sometimes, and often sadly in the case of environmental or planetary issues, the materials can be quite dry or come in a hemp shirt, if you like. So I think the learning needs to be an exciting experience, just as Claire has said, talking about the dynamite, you know, this excitement gives the lasting impact. So if you're teaching from real life projects, it has that captivating immediacy and excitement. So Claire, I wonder if you could tell us about some of the projects that we featured in the magazine.
Yes, so we tried to show some of the actual projects that Blue is working on, and we're working in 3 islands in the middle of the Atlantic: Ascension, Tristan da Cunha and St. Helena. And the pop-out fold in the middle of the magazine is a map of St. Helena, a sort of representational map. And it's a relatively small island, but it has this huge area of ocean around it, about the size of Spain, which contains incredible life. I think a third of all the UK's endemic species are on St Helena and in the surrounding waters. And they have whale sharks in abundance in the waters. So it was exciting for children in the UK to learn about, but we were also able to send these magazines out to all the school children on St Helena, which was really wonderful that we could kind of connect them and celebrate their extraordinary waters in this way. We also featured a project in the Maldives, which is all about how local children gain awareness of the importance of their own islands and the role they can play in protecting nature for the benefit of the whole world. Another great project that we included was our oyster restoration project in the Solent. The children were able to make cages to represent the ones that we use in this project, which get filled with oysters and then suspended under marinas. The oysters then breed and release billions of larvae into the surrounding waters, some of which are able to kind of cling on to shell and become adult oysters. And the oysters in the cages also attract a huge number of other marine species. As many as 100 different species have been found living in and around the cages, including seahorses and endangered eels. So the children can learn about all these types of sea creatures while also making something physical, which I think is a really fun activity for them.
Well, they certainly had so much fun with that activity, Claire. That was your idea. It was absolutely brilliant. You called it an Oyster Hotel, and that's what the children loved the most, seeing all these weird and wonderful guests swim up and book their room, if you like. So it was, such a lovely creative approach. We try to make the resources as easy as possible for the teachers to use too. We know that the teachers have got really busy schedules, so we created lesson plans that teachers could use or adapt, and sets of classroom resources to go with them. And I think that mixture of dynamic resources based on real projects and seeing real people is very powerful. You understand the problems in the context of solutions. In fact, you even get to make the solutions yourself. So you have this hands-on experience of being an interactive problem solver.
Yeah, that's right. One of the things the children learned how to do is to make a marine protected area. So that included learning about satellites and drones, which is a vital part of patrolling the distant waters of the ocean.
And I think it's so important that Claire spoke about hope in the beginning, to have this absolutely positive sense that you can be part of making change, that children can be activists, they can be part of shaping this world, which is entirely possible to create. All of the solutions are here. It is simply a question of mindset, and children can be very much enabled to believe that there's so much that we can now do, and be taught exactly how to do that. Claire, you had a really lovely idea for how children could be activists, which I loved particularly. It was called Dear Minister, and involved children writing to their MPs. Could you tell us a little bit about that, please?
Yes, so there are lots of things children can do that we can all do, of course, in making changes to the way we shop and eat and behave, for example, not using straws or plastic bags. And the children can encourage their parents to shop for more sustainable fish. But the key challenge about ocean conservation at the moment is that politicians think that people don't care. And unless politicians change the way oceans are managed, nothing is going to change. So at the moment, they're primarily listening to quite a small interested group of commercial fishers. So if a lot of children were to write to their MPs and say, we're really worried about the state of the ocean, we're worried about climate change, we're worried about overfishing, we're worried about the health of our ocean, please will you do something about it for the sake of our future? I think that's very powerful. And that will potentially lead to a huge change in the way that policy is formed. I think children can get very upset and anxious about their future, very understandably, given the huge environmental problems that they're going to face in their lifetimes unless some big change is taken. As Joan Baez said, action is the antidote to despair. So if children are feeling desperate and anxious, then writing a letter to an MP, which of course develops their persuasive writing skills as well, will make them feel as if they're actually making a difference. And I think it's very important to give children the sense that they can change the world and so shape their own future.
Well, that's something very shocking what you just said there, Claire, and that's that we're not even aware of the decisions that are being made about fissions. Decisions about what happens to our oceans, which are our global commons, are being made in opaque corridors in Whitehall. And this underscores how important these ideas are that you shared about how we can bring understanding of our oceans and what happens to it into the classroom, into everyday life and consciousness. Kind of what you're saying is that we need a Marcus Rashford moment for our oceans, and that's the only way that we can do that is by making this issue highly visible.
Yes, that's right. I mean, Marcus Rashford has been great, and Greta Thunberg as well, because both of them have shown that you don't have to be a politician to bring about change. If you're really concerned about something, you can inspire millions of other people to be concerned as well. So I think both of those people have brought about very crucial turning points.
Oh, absolutely. Another excellent point that you made in talking about that activity of getting children to write to their MPs is that working with these topics can be transdisciplinary. Sometimes these things get confined to science and sometimes geography lessons, which in itself can be a barrier because teachers who don't see themselves as scientists or marine biologists feel that they can't teach these subjects. So seeing that the activities equally can be part of writing or creative projects allows children and teachers to play to their strengths, and it demonstrates that everyone can be part of looking after our planet.
Yes, I think the point about oceans being cross-disciplinary is a really interesting one. If you take geography, for example, a lot of geography focuses on the land, whereas in fact over 71% of the Earth's surface is ocean. So for the children to learn about all of these extraordinary places in the sea and these very remote islands will hopefully make their learning experiences really fun and be rewarding for the teachers as well.
Well, thank you so much, Claire, for sharing your time and experience. I mean, I know personally from working with you that you're an absolute inspiration. And it's been a real delight to collaborate with you in creating the Ocean Adventure resources. And I know that they've made a big difference. They've gone out to countries all around the world where Blue has projects. The children have been absolutely thrilled, so have the teachers. So, that's already had a considerable impact. I just wanted to ask, do you have a final message for teachers on how best to integrate learning about our oceans into teaching?
Well, gosh, I mean, first of all, I'm so grateful for the opportunity to talk today and for the interest in the subject. I think in a sense, the onus is on us, Blue, to provide more materials, which we're working on. And in particular, we're working on materials about this very complex, but obviously completely vital link between the health of the oceans and climate change. So, watch this space for more materials, but in the meantime, just, I guess, enjoy it, pass on your own enthusiasm about what is, an almost bottomless and fascinating subject.
I'll acknowledge the pun there, the bottomless ocean of inspiration, which I think you certainly embody, Claire. I really hope this has provided some guidance and insight for all the wonderful teachers out there. Effectively, you are the most important people in helping our young people to understand and take care of our beautiful planet. And I know so many of you are already teaching this brilliantly. So please do believe in yourselves and keep on with this absolutely vital work. Thank you so much.